Since the beginning, America has confounded the experts.
I mean, there's this upstart group of people with no royalty telling them how to live.
And an absurd notion that they could elect commoners from their peers to govern them.
Surely this misguided concept would soon end up on the scrap heap of history.
But you know how the rest of the story goes. We've been kicking butt and taking names for well over 200 years.
Never in the history of the world has there been a juggernaut country like America.
It's an adventure that continues every day, and we're all a part of it.
So listen up for the next few minutes to see how you can experience this up close and firsthand.
We're talking about a trip of a lifetime here. It's called the Youth Tour, an American adventure.
Since long before we were born, electric cooperatives of Texas have been sending Lone Star State teenagers just like us to Washington, D.C. on the Youth Tour. For many, it was definitely the experience of a lifetime. Just look at how much fun these guys were having.
Now it's your turn to continue this legacy. And here's the best part. It's free, which means it costs you nothing. So come join us on this adventure and see what you could be doing next June.
Leaving out on big buses and traveling across the country may not mean a lot to you right now, but this American adventure begins when we all load up on buses and head out over the open highway to DC.
I know this might not sound appealing at the moment, but this is actually one of the coolest parts of the trip. We enjoy a movie marathon across America, and we play games to satisfy our competitive urges. And when there's nothing else to do, you better believe we sleep.
When we finally pull into the capital city, the first thing we do is truck down to the Hard Rock Cafe for some burgers, good times, and our first shopping opportunity of the trip. This is a great way to shake off the road miles and spend some money.
Bright and early the next morning, we continue the party at the NRACA-sponsored Rural Youth Day. This is where almost 1,500 kids from across the USA get together for some rah-rah, in-your-face yell-a-thons and pomp and ceremony speeches from real live American heroes. It was great even if we did learn something.
The Smithsonian Institution is a world-famous organization. It is located on the National Mall and is the world's largest museum complex. Its attractions draw more visitors every year than any other tourist center in our nation.
It's been 100 years now since man first accomplished the feat of powered flight. Wilbur and Orville did it in the Wright Flyer, which now hangs at the entrance of the Air and Space Museum. This place is the most visited museum in the world and has every kind of flying machine imaginable on display.
From fragile-looking early aircraft that made today's modern air flight possible, to spam in a can spacecraft that took our first astronauts into space, you can see it here. If you're into the flying thing, you definitely need to spend some time in this place.
Yes, I'm sure that's all very interesting. But for sophisticated and refined types, there's the National Art Gallery, where one can enjoy the most amazing artwork in the world. Here, the atmosphere visually penetrates the cranium with a pulsating plethora of color and form that excites the eye and stimulates the mind. And the statues that line the hallway are absolute masterpieces. Something you could lose your head over.
Yeah, like we told you up front, America's the new kid on the block as far as countries of the world go. But man, we've reshaped the planet on which we live like no other nation in history. In the American History Museum, you can see some of the milestones of our accomplishments and get an idea of what life was like for our forefathers.
For some of us, roaming up and down the National Mall, visiting the Smithsonian was worth everything we had to do to come on this trip. Remember, you could be seeing all these things and more next June when you live the Youth Tour, an American adventure.
It never hurts to experience a little culture while having a good meal and yucking it up with your friends. We did all of this at the West End Dinner Theater, where we laughed, sang, and hooted to the Pirates of Penzance. It was a great way to wrap up our first full day in Washington.
It has been a long-standing tradition of the Youth Tour to have your picture taken on the steps of the Capitol. And this year, we continue the tradition, even though the front lawn was torn up completely by construction of the new Capitol Visitor Center. When the camera shutter snaps and the moment is captured,
You really feel like you are a part of the history of this place.
The Capitol building was burned by the British during the War of 1812 and on September 11th targeted for destruction by terrorists. Only heroic action by brave Americans on United Airlines Flight 97 saved it from destruction. It still stands beautiful and proud, an endearing symbol of our representative form of government.
Inside are spectacular paintings that tell the famous stories of American history. In Statuary Hall are statues of men and women who helped shape the great nation we are. At the top of the rotunda sits George Washington, surrounded by angels, looking down on all who visit. It is truly an amazing building.
To most people, their congressional representative is just an image that they see on TV. But on our American adventure, we had a chance to talk to our representative face to face about issues that affect us all.
The way to get involved in politics is to work for other candidates. And by that I mean pass out brochures, pass out cards, raise a little money. It takes money to run, and if you can go out and raise a little money, well, that's good for the candidate of your choice, whether they're running for county judge or President of the United States.
There are 3 branches in our form of government, and across the street from the Capitol is the Supreme Court building. This is where the highest court in the land makes landmark decisions that affect our daily lives. It was inspirational visiting this place.
The Washington National Cathedral towers above the city in ornate splendor and is an idea first promoted by George Washington. He envisioned a place where all Americans could come and worship. This structure took more than 80 years to complete and was built entirely from donations.
Inside, this Gothic structure is a visual delight that dazzles the eyes and lifts the spirits. The beauty of the sanctuaries is literally breathtaking. My Texas heart swelled with pride when I learned that the centerpiece of this masterpiece is carved from Texas limestone. Throughout, the many stained glass windows depict stories from the Bible to modern day times. There's even a window that has a rock from the moon in it.
The White House is home to the most powerful man on the planet, and the fact that a Texan calls 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue home is just fine with me. Looking at the graceful lawns, beautiful fountains, and white columns made me realize that beauty and strength of this nature is a rare combination.
The Youth Tour is a pick 'em up and move 'em out kind of adventure that demands we stay on the go long and hard. But we also get to let our hair down and hang out with people all over. The All States Dinner and Dance is a chance to shake and shout and get a little bit crazy.
Many historians believe that if there was not a George Washington, the United States of America would be very different than it is today. For a man that spent most of his adult life in service to his country, his true passion was his beloved estate at Mount Vernon.
This place has been lovingly restored and carefully maintained. Visiting here is like taking a time capsule to the 18th century. More than 80% of the house is made up of the original material. It really is amazing to rub your hands on the railing and know that the father of your country touched the same wood.
At 555 feet, the Washington Monument, by law, is the tallest building in our nation's capital city. It is also the tallest freestanding stone structure in the world.
It was constructed to honor our first president, who even in life stood head and shoulders above other men. From the top, you can see all the other landmarks that make Washington, D.C. such a special place. It really is a spectacular view.
He wrote the Declaration of Independence while in his 20s. Later, while serving as our 3rd president, he more than doubled the size of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase. The Jefferson Memorial sits on the banks of the tidal basin and is an eloquent commemorative to honor such an extraordinary man. The 40-foot bronze statue stands looking across the city at the White House as if to let those who live there know that the giants of the past are still watching.
The newest presidential memorial is completely different than any other. It's an open-air spot dominated by graceful waterfalls to stimulate contemplation and statues that reflect what life was like during some of the roughest times America has ever known. Franklin D. Roosevelt led this country through the Great Depression and World War II.
John F. Kennedy was the youngest man ever elected president. His assassination in 1963 is considered a watershed event, much like that of Abraham Lincoln a century earlier. The Kennedy Center is an elegant building that bears his name and features long, flag-draped halls and huge crystal chandeliers, leading to world-class performance theaters.
I've always heard that being flexible is important, and we truly learned this on the youth tour. Normally, on the final day in Washington, we go to Arlington National Cemetery, where more than 200,000 American soldiers rest in honored glory. We also watch the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknowns.
By Friday morning, the skies opened up and there was a downpour that caused us to change our plans. We needed a place to hang out, so we headed to the ESPN zone, and we dropped some change in a really cool video arcade. There was pony riding, rafting, motorcycling, and lots of other cool stuff. It was a great place, even if it was a last-minute replacement.
In my little town, 3 pickup trucks on Main Street is a traffic jam. But in DC, the streets are packed bumper to bumper with cars. So on the last day, we rode the Metro, Washington, D.C.'s subway system. It ramped up your adrenaline level getting on board and hanging on for dear life. We all made it to our destination without losing one person.
You've seen it on TV and in the movies, but until you stand at the foot of Lincoln Memorial, you can't appreciate how large and beautiful it truly is. The eyes of the statue seem to follow you no matter where you go. His vision of the mighty nation we could be is the reality we live today. Since it was constructed, the Vietnam War Memorial has been a moving monument that brings some to tears. As you look into that black granite wall with 58,000 casualty names engraved on it, you can see your own reflection. We made rubbings of names so we would never forget what the true cost of freedom has been from generation to generation. It was kind of scary to think that some of these soldiers were not much older than us.
A half-century ago, Americans fought in the Korean War, which until recently was known as the Forgotten War. Current events in North Korea have thrust it back into the headlines. It is one of the more unusual memorials, which has a squad of soldiers moving through a rice paddy. In the fading daylight, you could almost picture yourself there with them.
Lookout Mountain, Tennessee is the last stop on our youth tour and the place where we hold our final Sunday celebration service. As we ride a cable car almost a mile into the sky, the clouds are so close, it feels like you can almost reach out and touch them. At the top, our service is moving because we know that we will soon have to say goodbye to all our new friends.
Okay, you've just seen a small part of the youth tour, an American adventure.
It's a 12-day trip that'll change your life forever. So, do whatever it takes to become a part of this great adventure next year, because it is definitely the experience of a lifetime.